Are you ready to bake the holidays? It's Thanksgiving, and we're gonna tackle some not so traditional recipes. This is not your grandma's pumpkin pie. Nothing against your grandma's pumpkin pie, I'm sure it's amazing. Instead, I'm making this insanely delicious cake. And I'm making bread from scratch. A delicious leftover hack and a tart that will blow everyone's mind. Whether you're a seasoned baker or a holiday novice, you are not gonna wanna miss these sweet and savory treats. Happy Thanksgiving! I'm Mia Star, and I love to bake. Woo! I like to roll up my sleeves, get creative, and decorate all kinds of yummy treats. So amazing, it's like a flavor explosion. And to me, any holiday is a perfect excuse to throw on an apron, make a giant batch of buttercream, and get a little extra. Ooh! I'll teach you techniques and show you a ton of shortcuts. Isn't this the cutest thing you've ever seen? Whatever your level of expertise, I promise you'll be able to pull this off. Let's bake the holidays. I love a carrot cake in the fall, and it fits seamlessly on your Thanksgiving table because it's basically like a vegetable side dish. Let's get started on the batter. I have flour, salt, baking soda, baking powder, then all my warming spices. I've got cinnamon, ginger, cloves, and nutmeg. Since there are so many different spices in this cake, it's important to mix them into the dry ingredients first to make sure that they're evenly dispersed before combining the whole batter together. Now move over and combine your wet ingredients. First, I've got brown sugar, a lot of eggs, granulated sugar, vanilla. Then I'll add applesauce, which adds some moisture to the cake. And whisk that up to combine. Oh wait, also add oil. Now add all the wet ingredients to your dry. Carrot cake is one of my personal favorite cakes because I love the warming spices, and I think it's just the right amount of sweet to go well with a little bit of a sweeter frosting. Now I'm gonna fold in my shredded carrots, and I save this step for last because I don't want the carrots to get in the way of combining the batter because they're a little bit chunkier. You can buy shredded carrots, but freshly shredded carrots are gonna give you the best, freshest flavor. Now I'm gonna divide the batter evenly across my 3 cake pans. Now I'm gonna bake these at 350 for about 30 to 40 minutes. While the carrot cake bakes, let me show you my go-to buttercream recipe. In the bowl of a stand mixer fitted with a paddle attachment, beat 1 pound of butter. When the butter is soft and lump-free, add 1/2 cup of sweetened condensed milk, 2 pinches of salt, 1 teaspoon almond extract, 4 teaspoons vanilla extract, and 1 pound of powdered sugar. Beat the mixture until it's smooth and creamy. Set it aside until you're ready to use it. My cakes are leveled and cooled, so it's time to stack it. Start with a little dollop of buttercream right on the center of the cake board and place the first layer of cake down. Now I'm going to plop a chunk of buttercream right in the center and smooth it out to the edges. Next layer right on top, press down to make sure it sticks. I'm sure you know what a crumb coat is, but for those of you who are new here, a crumb coat basically is the first layer of buttercream that goes on the cake to trap in all the crumbs close to the cake. Then it gets chilled and the buttercream sets so you have a nice sturdy base to work with. For this cake, I'm going to start with a very basic, clean white finish of buttercream on the top. I push the buttercream over the edge, and then with whatever's hanging off, that I press down the sides, just working my offset spatula back and forth until I reach the base. See how I have some patches here that aren't as smooth as the section up here? I can fill that in similar to spackling a wall. Fill in that section with more buttercream, then use the scraper to smooth everything into one plane. To clean up the top edge, you can do it all with a spatula. The technique is just to grab the edge like this and drag it in towards the center of the cake. Now I have some caramel in a squeeze bottle to add a pretty drip on the side of the cake. This caramel runs pretty quick, so just start with a little bit at first. Gravity will pull it down further than you think. All the decorative elements on this cake you can buy at the store, so it's a really quick and easy way to make an elegant design. The reason why I chose a waffle cone for this cake is because it kind of looks like a cornucopia, which is a symbol of Thanksgiving and represents the fall harvest, bounty, abundance, and that's what I'm going for with the overflowing of fall fruits. I always start with the larger pieces and then fill in the gaps with the smaller ones. So that's why I'm gonna start with grapes and blackberries and the golden berries. Then I'll place the blueberries here and there wherever I feel like it fits. So really, I'm unhappy with the caramel drip. I wanted to try the caramel just to see if I could take a shortcut, but it didn't work how I planned. But that's okay, I'm gonna pivot. I'm a cake decorator, which is all about pivoting and making it work, whatever your circumstances. Besides the fruit coming out of the cornucopia, I want to add a few clusters of fruit at the base and also maybe outside because there's a lot of white space. I want to find a way to fill it up a little bit. This decoration is a lot simpler than a more elaborate piped cake, but that's because on Thanksgiving you have so much cooking to do that with dessert, go easy on yourself and make it simple. Just buying some fruit and placing it on your cake like this, you can get a very elegant, impactful design without that much effort. I'm missing the drip and the caramel was too thin, so I think I'm gonna pivot and just use a dark chocolate ganache. To make a quick ganache that will drip nicely on a cake, I mix about 2/3 chocolate and then about 1/3 of cream. Pop it in the microwave for 30 seconds. I'm just gonna drip this on quickly with a spoon. So much better. The idea is to make it look like the drip is coming out of the cornucopia. It really adds to the feeling of abundance. Yay! We made it work! I'm actually really happy with how this turned out. I think it turned out better than if I had used the caramel because the dark chocolate gives it a nice contrast. Next, I'm baking bread, and you're gonna love the shape. I gotta be honest, bread has not really been my thing in the past, but for Thanksgiving this year, I wanted to stretch my baking skills, so I perfected these pumpkin dinner rolls. First step is to activate the yeast. I have active dry yeast that I'm going to combine with sugar and flour. Then mix that with warm milk. This is about 100 degrees. The yeast is just like us. It likes a nice, cozy, warm environment that's not too hot, not too cold, kind of like Goldilocks. Now set this aside for about 5 to 10 minutes to activate. What you're looking for is little bubbles to start to form, which is the yeast releasing carbon dioxide. Add this to a bowl with a dough hook attached. And then with a fork, mix in some eggs and the pumpkin. Just use a fork to break up the eggs and start to form a paste. Add a few spoonfuls of flour and mix that in, about 1/2 cup. And the flour is going to give the dough hook something to grab onto. Then attach the dough hook and let it do its thing. Now I'm gonna add softened butter a little bit at a time. Start adding flour a spoonful at a time. And salt will dehydrate the yeast, but adding the flour in first acts as a buffer for the yeast. What I'm looking for now is for the dough to form one cohesive lump around the dough hook. Okay, my dough looks great. I'm gonna leave it to knead now for about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, look, the dough's really come together. It's one cohesive lump and it's looking really smooth and shiny, and it's also walking around the bowl. Now I'm gonna gently form it into a ball by tucking the ends of the dough underneath. Now place the dough ball into the bowl, flip it over to coat the whole thing in oil. I'm gonna set this aside on top of my oven because it's a nice warm spot for it to rise. First, I'm gonna lay down a little bit of flour just to keep it from sticking, but not too much because you don't wanna dry out the dough. Wow. To get 8 slices, I cut it in half, and then in half again, and then all those pieces in half again. Now take your pieces, they look like triangles, but we're gonna form them into balls. Just like before, tuck the ends underneath, and then a spot with no flour, set that down, and roll it into a ball. That. The reason why I'm tucking rather than just mashing it and forming it into a ball is because I got all that rise, all that air into the dough. I don't want to smush it and deflate it. So we're being gentle with it. Now everything's in a ball, and I'm gonna soak my strings that I'm gonna use to make them look like pumpkins. Now lay the strings out across, up and down. So we'll create 6 sections with the strings. Now that perfect dome, the top of the roll is gonna go upside down on that cross. Then tie your strings up to create indents to look like a pumpkin. Tie them snug, but not too tight. Now I'm gonna put that on my sprayed and lined baking sheet. This time I'm gonna use 4 strings. I like to switch it up so that they look natural like real pumpkins. I think some people might say that making food decorative like this is excessive or unnecessary, but remember that food is enjoyed with all our senses, not just taste and smell. So I think that the joy that beautifully looking food brings to a Thanksgiving table, it's worth the extra effort. Now I'm going to cover them and set them off to the side so that they can do their second rise. Not too tight here because we just don't want them to dry out. I'm gonna set them by the window to rise so that they can stay nice and warm. Wow, nice, they did rise nicely. See how the dough kind of splooched out of the strings? That really gives a defined pumpkin look. With a pastry brush, just lightly coat the top of the pumpkins with the egg wash. I mix a little bit of salt to break down the albumin in the egg, which is basically the stringy white part, so it's a lot easier to spread. Final step before they go into the oven is to create the stem of the pumpkins by breaking a pretzel stick in half and stick it as close to the center as you can. You can use a nut, a pecan, a little almond to create a stem, but I think these little pretzel rods look really cute. Now pop your pumpkins in the oven at 350 for about 20 to 25 minutes. Look how cute! These have been cooling for about 10 minutes so I can pick them up and really get in there and smell them. They really look just like little pumpkins that you would buy to decorate your house, like the ones that I have decorating my kitchen. Wow, so cute! Look at this. Wow. This roll is so soft and buttery and fluffy, and I get a little hint of pumpkin at the end. Coming up, let's fast forward to the day after Thanksgiving, and I'm gonna show you what to do with all those leftovers you have. Post-Turkey Day, I'm always looking for creative ways to use my leftovers so I'm not eating the same meal for a week straight. That's why I like this savory bread pudding. First step, chop everything into bite-sized pieces. I have turkey, but maybe you've got some honey-baked ham. The green beans are already chopped into bite-sized pieces, so I'm gonna toss them in. For my Thanksgiving, I've got leftover cream spinach, but for this recipe, you can use any leftover vegetables that you have. So you can use your spatula to break everything up and toss it together. I have stuffing, and this I'm just gonna break with my hands into small pieces. Listen, you probably spent all day cooking and baking on Thanksgiving Day, so the idea here is to make it as simple as possible. Just throw everything in a casserole dish and call it a day. Now I'm gonna mix in the stuffing, and then I'll break up my bread rolls and add that in. Last year for Thanksgiving, I hosted a Friendsgiving for just a few of my friends who also didn't travel home. And we had a giant turkey that we made for just 4 or 5 people. So the next day, we had so much turkey left over, and this would be a great way to use it. I'm gonna start with 2 bread rolls, then mix it up and add it to my casserole dish, and see if I need to add anything else. I know I said you can put whatever you want in here, but the bread is actually an essential ingredient because it is called a bread pudding. This is also a great way to sneak in vegetables for picky eaters because everything's all mixed together, and once all the gravy's spread out, they're gonna not even know, everything's gonna taste so good. Now, because I'm tired of doing dishes because of Thanksgiving, I'm gonna use the same bowl to make the savory custard to go on top of my bread pudding. This is about 1 cup of leftover gravy. I'm gonna add milk and some eggs. Bread pudding can be made sweet or savory, and so since this is a savory bread pudding, the gravy, milk, salt, and pepper is gonna amp up the flavor. You know what? I think this needs one more thing, garlic. Mix it up. Now just drizzle the custard over the whole casserole dish. Let this sit and soak for about 5 minutes and then pop it in the oven at 350 for about an hour and a half. The savory bread pudding's done! Oh, it's like all the best smells of Thanksgiving all in one dish. Mmm, that is delectable. The gravy really pulls all the flavors together of everything that's in this bread pudding. It's really salty and hearty, delicious. Finally, it's my take on the Thanksgiving pie. You've seen the artful geometric pies all over social media. This one's easier than you think. You know I love a challenge, so when I saw the geometric pie art trend pick up, I was determined to figure it out. You're gonna love this pear tart. In the bowl of a food processor, combine flour, sugar, and salt. Then pulse that together. It's important for this recipe to use ice cold butter because the cold butter is going to just cut into the dough and still leave some chunks of butter in the dough. What that's gonna do when the crust bakes is the butter is going to melt and create pockets of air that's gonna give the crust the flakiness that we all love. Add water in as you're pulsing the dough so that the water mixes in evenly. You don't wanna add too much, but just enough to bring the dough together. Okay, let's look. So now the dough's starting to form. If you can see that when I squeeze a clump together, it stays together. So just grab all the crumbly pieces and push it into the dough until it forms one ball. Now I'm gonna shape it into a flat disc. Now wrap up the disc of dough in a sheet of plastic wrap and chill it in the fridge. On to the filling. You'll need 8 pears. 2 of them are gonna be for the filling. First, peel the pears. Now chop the pear into about 1/2-inch cubes, but they don't have to be pretty because we're gonna cook it up anyway. As the pan is heating up, I'm gonna add butter, brown sugar, and ginger. The ginger is really gonna brighten up this filling, give it a tasty zing. When choosing the pears for the filling and the top of the tart, you want to save the softest ones for the top. Since we're not going to cook them, they're going to be the most delicious to eat. The firmer ones, it's okay to put in the pan because they're going to soften in here. Ooh, the butter's nice and melted, so time to add the pears. Now, I always chop more fruit than I need because I know I can't help myself and I'm going to snack on a few. Now I'm going to let this cook for about 6 to 8 minutes to let the pears soften. With my immersion blender, I'm just gonna blend up the pears. Now that it's all smooth, pour it right back into the pan. Now with a small spoon, I'm gonna mix together the cornstarch and water to create a slurry, which will thicken up the sauce. Now add the slurry in slowly while you move the sauce around so that you can thicken it evenly and not create globs of pear sauce. The cornstarch reaches its fullest thickening potential when it boils, so let this get super hot. Now take the sauce off the heat before mixing in vanilla. I'm gonna put this aside to cool off while I prepare the rest of my tart. First lay down some flour to make sure it doesn't stick. Then roll it out to about 1/4 inch thick. Be careful to keep it all in one big circle because this is actually a pie dough, which is a lot harder to repair if it tears or cracks. Now that it's rolled out, I'm gonna transfer it to the tart pan, then press it in so that the dough gets down into the corners. Use your thumb just to rip it off at the edges. Now put this in the freezer for about 20 minutes before baking it. It's nice and cold, so I'm gonna take a fork and just poke some holes on the bottom to let the air escape. Now I'm gonna blind bake the tart. Take a sheet of plastic, lay it over the tart shell. These dry beans are gonna hold the dough down and keep the dough up flush against the edges of the pan. And that's gonna help it cook to start. Then we'll take the beans out and bake it the rest of the way to get that golden brown. Now bake this at 375 degrees for about 20 minutes. About 10 to 15 minutes in, I'll take out the beans. For the pears, I'm gonna cut very thin sections. That way I can shape and arrange them and it gives me a little bit more flexibility. The goal is to keep the pear all nice in one piece because I'm gonna fan it out on top of the tart. In my culture, there is a term for the art of decorative cutting, and it's called kazarigiri. And you see it often on vegetables, roots, and even fish cake. Last year for New Year's, with my mom, I cut up fish cake into little shapes like flowers, and I made penguins, and it's a really fun way to make food beautiful with just a knife. I have all my components ready, and now I'm gonna assemble. First, take all your pear ginger sauce and fill it into the tart. This is gonna be the glue to hold down all the pears, and also it's just a really yummy filling. Spread it all the way out to the edges. To create the design, start with about 4 or 5 slices of pear. Fan out the pears, and then place them on the outside edge of the tart. How beautiful is that? It's really important that you use ripe pears for the top because not only are they soft and delicious, but they're a little bit more pliable so that you can form them into the shape that you want. I love these colors because they remind me of the changing leaves in the autumn. It's very seasonal. Now, as I'm working towards the center, I have less space, so you can just trim the pears when you need to. What I like about this pear tart is that it's very fresh. Since we're using fresh, uncooked pears on top, it's a really light way to end your Thanksgiving meal. And here's my finished pear tart. I'm really proud of this one. I think this will be a perfect end to your Thanksgiving meal. Whatever your celebration looks like, I hope you feel inspired to create your own Thanksgiving food memories this year. From bread to tart, leftovers to carrot cake, there's something for every appetite. See you next time on Baking the Holidays.